to the 43rd ACM SIGCHI Mumbai Chapter meet. So Apurv is a senior product manager at Microsoft India. So he currently leads the project MISCHU, assisted selling experiences for last mile under-reserved consumers via Mu SMBs, where he leads a 10 plus member cross-functional team of product managers, designers, engineers, and QAs. He previously collaborated with TRI Government of India and various philanthropic organizations to build and deploy blockchain for public good use cases. He is also the co-founder of Three Wheels United, a data-driven fintech company which was spun out of his work at Microsoft Research India, recognized and awarded for its innovative financing models for EVs and sustainability. A very warm welcome to you, Apurv. Thanks for joining us. There's quite a lot of interesting work that you've done here, and we would love to hear about it from you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Kanari. Thank you so much, Danny, for having me. So today I'll talk about the work that we did at MSR India. In fact, it's been 6 odd years ago when I started this, along with my colleagues Jackie and others, which in fact got spun out into a startup called Three Wheels United, which we spoke about. So the way that I have the talk structured is I'll just give a very short overview about this group called Technology for Emerging Markets, which is now Technology for Empowerment, which is a group out of MSR India, where we are doing a lot of work in the domain of societal impact and emerging markets. Then I'll specifically talk about this project called Prayana, which was in the financial inclusion domain and became Three Wheels. So I'll take you through the problem statement, the underlying studies, the findings, and what we in fact built out. So with that, I'll just get started. So technology and empowerment group is basically the underlying thesis is now that we are trying to design technology as an ally and enabler for inclusion and empowerment. So TEM has, as a group, over the last, I think, more than a decade old group now, and I had joined this in 2016, have been trying to focus on some high value social challenges ranging from the domain of healthcare, financial inclusion, entertainment, road safety, accessibility, all across. But the TEM has a unique approach in terms of how they or how they view a problem, in terms of having a user-centered design, having an interdisciplinary team of engineers, data scientists, social scientists, all ML practitioners coming together trying to solve a problem. So you have a very broad and very varied POV when that comes across when you're looking at the problem. Also, given a lot of the work is situated in the global south in emerging markets, there's always the underlying thesis of having a frugal innovation, all backed by rigorous measurement, and a lot of the work that we do gets published into top conferences like IICACW, Compass, etc. Now, in some ways, the work that gets undertaken over here is unique for the user communities. Again, the global south setting where, uh, wait, just give me a moment. Yeah. Uh, so one in India and also across emerging markets, we see that we don't even there's a lot of large chunk of population which is not just mobile first but mobile only. That mobile phone or a smartphone would be the only available intelligent computing device that they have access to or through which they access internet. Uh, Again, for a large segment, connectivity still a challenge, which is obviously with the geo effect, it has gone down rapidly. But if we go, in fact, Danny was talking about it just before, uh, that people face affordability and access to connectivity still comes out as a challenge in some settings. And offline communication and peer-to-peer networks are fairly prevalent. We still have close to 200 million people who are unbanked. Again, at least in India, this number has fallen drastically. But further research which has done has shown that again, just having a bank account does not mean that you're able to leverage all the facilities of the banking ecosystem and the financial ecosystem. And again, there are aspects around culture and multilingualism which come and play a unique role when we think about uh, the problems in global south. So typically when we undertake projects, they follow this unique pipeline where we first start out in terms of looking at existing behavior and trying to understand what the problem is, situated in the context of the people who are using it. Come back, try and design some solutions. A lot of it is participatory design, uh, and goes through several iterations itself. And then some of this work actually goes out and get deployed in the real world settings. Uh, and in some cases, you might want to go back and revisit your assumptions and iterate on the design. And then once we have some confidence in terms of the work, it gets scaled out. It could be through product groups inside Microsoft or NGOs, academia, government, even external startups, as we see. This is just the same picture. Now that the only addition in this pipeline is this center called SKY, Societal Center for Cloud and AI. Which is focused on incubating and supporting a lot of these projects with the which have an underlying uh, impact goal, societal impact goal. And like I spoke about, there are both these avenues where uh, some of the work gets scaled up through internal product groups or some of these large national champions or Microsoft partners, and a lot of the work actually then goes out uh, and gets scaled through nonprofits and spin-offs and startups, uh, and hence business and societal impact sort of goes hand in hand. So that was about TEM. Now this was one work. We'll switch gears and talk about Prayana, or the work in the domain of financial inclusion, which was the work I had, in fact, joined in 2016 and was my first project which I undertook there with my colleagues, Jackie O'Neill, at that time, who was the principal investigator on this. Uh, and the broad problem that we were looking at was how do you enable low income communities access to formal financial services like savings, loans, insurance. In this work, we focused primarily on loans. So before we do that, I'll just give you a quick deep dive into the financial inclusion landscape of India. Uh, so now there is basically, even today, there is a large chunk of people in the world who are unbanked. And what typically happens is that you could think of it, there's a top segment of people who have good credit ratings, are earning a decent amount of money, they have enough financial history. So banks are willing to lend to them. In the financial world, you would call them a low touch setting, that okay, once the bank gives out loan, they explain to you the process, and then most likely you're supposed to pay back your EMIs on a monthly basis. Like we all have dealt with, banks have quite rigid processes in terms of how all the paperwork which needs to happen. Uh, and this model typically works again for people with fairly stable, large income, and being in the professional world. Then at the lowest, in the bottom of the pyramid, again, a lot of work has gone into studying the success of microfinance. And the advantage of microfinance is that it provides people the inherent flexibility. There is a lot of high touch. There are people who are part of the communities who are explaining constantly the process of the loan, educating people about their pending amounts, payments, all of those. So it's in essence a high touch process. a ton of it still being managed on uh, pen and paper, Excel sheets. So not too much automation and not too much process here in place. Uh, Very low default rates. Like that's one of the success of these models. Uh, but obviously, like we see the operational cost, like the cost of undertaking these at scale would be very high. Uh, uh, Now there is like another thing is that okay, MFIs typically do very small ticket size loans, something in the order of a few thousand, tens of thousands, not more than that. Banks, like we know, can do again depending on the credit rating, as big ticket sizes as possible. Uh, so now the underlying thesis was there's a large chunk of population which could actually benefit from larger ticket sizes loans, but banks don't want to lend to them because they will not be able to scale their high touch, low touch processes with them, and these rigid frameworks don't work for these audiences, and MFIs don't have the capability to manage credit at such large scale because of their high touch, uh, high operational processes, right? And among these segment of people, there is of these underbanked audiences, there are around 12 million auto rickshaw drivers in India. And just to give you a sense, there are roughly 6 million people in this segment, around 12 million, 6 million auto drivers on the ground, 12 million people. Out of roughly 50% of them are still driving rented autos across India. They don't own, basically, they are driving vehicles on rent. They don't own these vehicles. And roughly at the end of the day, they're taking somewhere between around 700 to 900,000 rupees home per day. Now, to start off with, just to understand, we undertook an ethnographic study of how, let's say, auto rickshaw drivers are managing their loans in this setting. So we conducted the study was conducted with this organization, which at that point was uh, a sort of a NGO working in this space. Uh, and we identified 47 borrowers, conducted semi-structured interviews with them, and this study was spread across a period of around 2.5, 3 months. Apart from semi-structured interviews and repeat interviews, there was also observations which were done at these collection centers and back offices. So this structure that was being there, like these were auto drivers who had taken loans from banks, and there was an NGO in the middle which was trying to manage collections for them. Uh, Now, what Three Wheels at that point had done was, in terms of managing collections for these drivers, they had adapted their services. Now, uh, basically, they had set up frequent collections. The people were not supposed to pay, they were not expected to save up small amounts and pay monthly, but they could pay at whatever frequency they preferred, anywhere as high as daily to even weekly or bi-weekly. And a lot of the people that they employed for collections were part of the community, so people knew them, and there were a lot of strong informal community relationships which were already there. For providing the services, a small part of the fees of the collections went to the people helping collect, which is what got put in as the TW fees here. And then the majority of the chunk went towards their loans. Now, as part of the findings, on the driver side, uh, this is again some of the codes which drivers put in. Putting money aside daily is not the same as paying daily. So what the drivers meant here is that uh, uh, it's easy for me to pay 200 or 100 rupees every time, but it gets hard when I have to pay 1,000 in one go because the money gets spent on other things. Now, this is very similar to the setup. Let's say if we, in terms of financial management, if we were supposed to take our monthly salaries and supposed to pay all our dues, all our bills at the end of the year, uh, how would we fare in terms of managing and keeping track of all those finances? And that's the kind of ordeal which drivers go on a monthly basis. They're earning enough, but having to plan all their finances for the entire month, where at the end of the day they're suddenly asked to pay thousands towards the EMI, becomes challenging. Even though they understand, okay, it's only 200 rupees per day, 100 rupees per day. Uh, Another thing is that driver said that given this entire setup was very ad hoc, they felt that they did not have enough information about how much is left, how much is uh, being paid off, where do they stand in terms of the entire loan journey. And this problem gets exacerbated because a lot of drivers don't have very high financial, digital and financial literacy. So how do you even explain that information to them? And what typically, again, banks do is they'll provide you a very uh, complex looking Excel sheet, which has just numbers, principal amount, all of those numbers, and you're supposed to make sense of, okay, where basically you are. Uh, and this is what I said, the monthly statements that which were being issued basically failed in terms of providing drivers the required information. Uh, Now, in terms of 3 weeks, the organization which was actually doing all this collections, they were using a mix of paper and tech. Basically, they were recording all these activities which were happening on the ground, and the tech was used in terms of some SMSs, some Excel sheets being used to manage this entire operation. Now, uh, this meant that even though, let's say, SMSs work, there are several agents on the field which are trying to do collections, and then at the end of the day or at the end of the week, you're trying to collect some Excels. Uh, there is lack of immediate and correct information on the ground. It's getting collated, but it's not available at the moment. And when, let's say, a driver asks a question when a agent is on the ground, he will try to call up somebody who will look at some Excel, may or may not get the answers immediately, which was resulting into uh, not the correct information or the lack of information at the ground. So at the back office, they were using something known as a core banking system, which was an open source system, along with hundreds of Excel sheet, and all the payments which were being collected and then passed on to the bank was being done manually. Now, the problem on the collector sites or the people who were doing these collections were that they were having trouble providing the drivers the right information. Uh, and another interesting thing that we observed was that collectors played a very important role of being part of the community, of persuading, providing counseling, ensuring that everything is in order. And apart from just the habit of, or apart from just being a transactional relationship where somebody comes and you pay off a monthly or whatever designated loan amount, there was a social contract because the collectors were part of the community. So they understood the people, and if they had any concerns in terms of their loans, people discussed those with them. And the collectors were seen as people who they would provide financial advice also. Now, uh, to summarize, basically the borrowers, because of their limited literacy and having just about enough money in terms of being able to manage this, they were in a precarious situation, right? And the lending organization was trying to use a mixture of paper technology, but the lack of information and the high let's say uh, cost of, let's say, putting people on the ground and ensuring that everything goes, meant that it was difficult to scale the operations beyond. It was at that point running in one city in Bangalore with a few hundred drivers. It was difficult to scale that work. The good thing was, what we found is that uh, uh, something which was going really well on the ground is that loan management in this case was a collaborative achievement. There was a very strong element of trust between the collectors and the drivers, which meant that even in this ad hoc setup, a lot of information which is not accurate, people were still at least on the trust element quite high and happy with the system. So then, based on these findings on the ground, we came out with what we called an intermediated loan management solution, where On one end, for the borrowers or the drivers, we designed meaningful visualizations, motivators, and nudges to uh, convey to them, explain to them where do they stand in terms of their loan, provide them the right and accurate information, as well as the motivators and nudges were meant for them towards improving their repayment behavior so that they're able to pay the right amount at the right time. And for the lending organizations, which was the field agents as well as the people in the back office, for the field agents, we designed a way to understand the portfolio or the set of drivers that they were managing, and also a set of technologies which would help reduce the duplication. And for the back office, all of this work meant that you're streamlining their processes, creating now a knowledge of truth where everyone, the information is accurately recorded, as well as now this information can start being leveraged for actionable insights on the ground in terms of who needs support, which drivers are falling behind, because you have data collated at multiple levels and flowing in a very streamlined manner. So let's look at some of the things that we did. This is one of the early versions of the app. So if you see over here, uh, we realized that all the payment behaviors were each of the payment records were kept red and green. So one thing which drivers understood very well was this color coding of payments, where red meant that they have paid an amount which is not the right amount, and green meant something that they have which is the correct amount. And in their contextual reference, this is something they understood very well. Also, we introduced some of these the aspect of, let's say, whenever we saw loan being a collaborative process, uh, tools which the field agents could use to educate the drivers. And in this case, you see how we try to come up with a picturization of the loan buckets just to explain where they are in terms of their loans. So each bucket, or the each square here, represents 1 month of their EMI, and green are the set of months that they have paid off, and red are the set of months that they're behind on. So any driver looking at this visualization just could count the number of red boxes and see, okay, I am X months behind on my loan. Uh, so this was a way to abstract out all the complex financial information and present to them in a way that's uh, easily understandable in a very graphical and intuitive manner. Uh, Another thing was this nudge, which we introduced, where the loan agents could then, uh, based on the amount that the drivers were paying or they wanted to pay, could explain to them that, hey, if you continue paying, let's say in this case, 1,600 rupees per month, your loan would actually complete on some future date and you would have to incur some extra charges. Whereas if you pay whatever is the required amount, then your loan completes on some other day and how much amount you'll save. So, and this could be fine-tuned at various levels where people could choose the amount that they wanted to pay and see, okay, what would be the impact of their payments in future, but you get to see it today. Uh, Another thing were these motivators that we introduced, that at every X percentage of time, let's say when an auto driver complete 50% of his loan, he would yeah, see an auto pop-up which would show, okay, 50% complete. So it was like a progress bar on top of the auto rickshaw, which was ideally basically telling them, okay, you are this much closer to owning this vehicle now, which will then belong to you. And this was information which the uh, loan agent would convey while doing the collections, so that even if, let's say, the driver misses out, the loan agent can actually tell, okay, 50% of your loan is actually completed. uh, and in futures, these are slightly older slides, we tried to introduce uh, a gamification in terms of capturing their correct streaks of payment, like hat trick, sixer, whenever they did the right set of payments, and a small leaderboard in terms of how the drivers are doing uh, among the community, who are the people who are doing well. So sort of you recognize, okay, some role models who I can look up to. Okay, he's able to manage his loan, so can I. So encouraging good behavior as part of the community. Now, Shifting gears to the collector screens. So these are some of the screens we designed specifically for the field agent. And again, these are slightly older designs, but the thesis remains still the same. So at one glance, how do you give the field agent a sense of his portfolio? Uh, and the key differentiation again here was that he could see the drivers in red and green. And green are the drivers in his portfolio who are doing well, and red are the ones who need some attention or are behind. And in that set itself, he or she could see uh, the drivers, for example, who needed to be called or reached out today, because either their due date is coming up or they are behind, and they might have put in a reminder that okay, they'll be paying a follow-up sum of money today. So for the field agent, it becomes very collector, it becomes a very simple exercise. Okay, who do I need to reach out today? And is this driver doing well? In which case, it could be a very different conversation, or is this driver behind and you need to follow up on a few things? And you also get to see another section, which is of drivers who have not paid their due amount and are actually at the risk of falling behind, which might require some additional help and support. So now, as part of capturing the existing processes and the knowledge which was on the ground and formalizing some of it in terms of digital information, while the drivers on the ground with the field agents were doing the collections, uh, they could quickly do something as simple as whenever a driver whenever a driver called or they were at the ground, this pop-up would come up where they could just quickly mark some of these things, something which would take only 10 seconds, that did the driver pay or he will not pay or he could not did not pick up the phone, and the reasons for not paying. And another thing, in case, let's say the driver said he will pay later, then an amount and a date where they could just send a reminder so that, okay, they don't have to worry or write something down. The or the phone, the app would take care of when to remind them about and what did the driver promise. And another thing which we initially sort of introduced as an pure experiment, which but turned out quite interesting, was uh, the field agents' understanding of the trust they had for the drivers and how comfortable were they when the driver said, okay, I will be paying later or I would not be paying later. And we did a follow-up study on this to find out that the field agent's understanding of the driver set was way stronger than what even could be captured digitally. So whenever, let's say, a driver said he would pay later, uh, a field agent would, with a very high confidence, know if he's actually going to pay or not, which actually they captured through their whenever they mark these ratings. And then some other summary and screens for the field agents themselves to track where they are in terms of their collection schedule and how much progress have they made. So these were some motivators that we designed for them. Uh, Around 2017, 2018, again, when the Geo came in and there was a growing adoption of smartphone in the driver community, and apps like platforms like Ola, Uber became quite ubiquitous. We launched a version of this application for the drivers as well. Very similar screens. So you see the same bucket screens here as well, the same red and green and motivators. But now it was available directly to the drivers as part of an application that they own. And finally, over like the last few years, what we have matured the platform into is that uh, uh, we had started out with normal autos, but we've moved towards electric EV vehicles. And one reason for doing that was uh, uh, the problem statement exacerbated for EVs. The price of these vehicles are typically higher, but the total cost of ownership is lower because in the lifetime of the vehicle, an EV will cost way lesser than a typical auto because it's way cheaper to run on electricity. Plus, it's less polluting. Uh, Plus, the interesting part was a lot of these EV vehicles come with IoT sensors. So it means that you have additional information which is coming in from vehicle. And what we realized that, okay, we are collecting so much information on the ground from the field agents. If we're able to juxtapose and add the value that we capture from these vehicles itself, you can create a much stronger data model, which you could then take to banks and say, hey, you know what, we should be able to de-risk lending for people from these communities because we have so much rich information coming from the ground. Uh, and we can give sort of guarantees about and we can make strong predictions about the lending activities. So that's basically this is what resulted into the this work is what then got spun out of MSR into the full-blown tech-driven startup, which became Three Wheels United. And currently, the startup is focused on making data-driven lending for EVs. Still, three-wheelers are the primary segment, but they've also started going into two-wheelers and lending for all these people like we see Swiggy drivers, Zomato drivers. A lot of that is being managed by Three Wheels. Uh, so till date, again, this is slightly older, but now the numbers, I think 5,000 odd vehicles have been uh, financed. And with this, a lot of research coming in and the technology being built, they're doing very well compared to the default rate. It's less than 1%, whereas typically in the market you see 12 to 15% default rate people in this segment. So summarizing, basically the underlying uh, uh, key hypothesis or the key insights that we had gotten on the ground was the information gap that people face in terms of their financial digital literacy barriers. Uh, and we tried to bridge that with coming up with visualizations and a range of that could work for a range of literacies, as well as the concept of using intermediaries for providing that information in a very efficient and trustworthy manner. And the technology that was designed was not to cut the intermediaries out, but actually to empower them so that they can do their work in a more efficient and in a much more scalable manner. And uh, basically, uh, again, this is an underlying idea which we have seen now play out multiple times across projects, is that technology typically amplifies whatever is existing practice. Uh, and in this case, the practice was the collaborative work of loan repayment, and that's what we wanted to amplify. And another key idea was that, okay, we have to identify right partners on the ground in terms of scaling up any intervention that we could come out of a research lab. Uh, and finally, this is, I think, my last slide. So, uh, some of the learnings which I've had working on this and several other projects across the MSR is uh, a lot of times you try to go out and jump take a very technocentric approach that, oh, how can this technology solve problem A, how can federated ML solve the problem of uh, poverty, hunger. But actually, if you go at the most fundamental first principles, there is no single solution to a lot of these complex societal problems, and each of them have to be solved one step at a time. uh, the information awareness barrier, again, a lot of I speak to a lot of people and they say, hey, you know what, geo is there, problem in India has been solved. uh, but this additional nuance where just having access to internet does not solve for the information and awareness barriers. And in fact, in some sense, it has become more complex, where people who are able to leverage these services take a separate curve, whereas people who are cut out have a lot of additional challenges to take care of. And the one we discussed, where technology amplifying existing practice, it is true for both positive and negative scenarios. Uh, we all know where people now, let's say, so all of us have been in a shape where we have not realized, okay, we wanted to do something else, but we are stuck 1 hour on our YouTube just scrolling the feed or maybe Insta. And it's basically algorithms working, amplifying our existing need for, let's say, instant dopamine, instant gratification. And finally, we need to work through the right set of partners and organizations to and at least scale the solutions. It's seldom that you can cut out all intermediaries and believe technology solution alone could solve all the problems. So with that, I think I'll stop.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Apurv. It's such an interesting work. I've been, as a person who works in similar area, I've been constantly following the work that's done at MSR Bangalore, and it's been amazing to see work that is that have spun out of a research lab and now a fully fledged operation, and then the learning that you get from running this in long term with a real world impact accumulated over a year is much of higher value in some sense than a research project that's running for a couple of years and then dropping off. So I'm really amazed by the insights that you shared today. Was wondering, like, so right now the situations are all you mentioned about different challenges. Network connectivity is kind of ramping up in India, but again, as you mentioned, the the literacy required for somebody to use this technology connectivity in to better their life is still a big challenge, especially in this section that you point your work towards, right? So in those scenario, can you think about, like, right now there are a lot of discussions about the financial inclusion even from the government side. Government is the biggest platform, as we all agree. So the India Stack, OCE, and all this is everywhere. Like, people have this wonderful dreams about future that's on the horizon. So what's your? I would like to listen to your take on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, so great question, Danny. First of all, okay. I think my personal take on that. In fact, I've been working with some of these platforms, including ONDC, and in past have worked with India Stack. So one, there's an inherent leapfrogging some of these platforms which they have enabled us to do. For example, the convenience which UPI has brought in, and again the not just convenience but also the fact that it was able to penetrate to the lowest tier far and wide, and it made economic sense also for people to adopt it, let's say vis-a-vis the existing payment mechanisms. So some of these are doing well. Then there are other parts which are some of these newer platforms which are coming out, which you mentioned, like ONDC. There is Oken, there is work around DEPA, and we have now decentralized, let's say, protocols coming in for mobility and even education. Uh, Now, my personal take is that again, if the right uh, centers and the right I would say partners are identified in terms of scaling and promoting these platforms, it can actually uh, help uh, bridge a lot of existing gaps. But then apart from these stacks, which are very platform, which are almost all of these protocols, or these are very platform, have a very platform centric approach, there are a lot of last mile challenges to be solved. A platform could enable, let's say, a more faster, a more transparent, a more efficient way of communicating information, a more cheaper way of getting things done. But some of these last mile challenges which we touched upon, like language barriers, uh, they have to be tackled separately, and they have to be incorporated. Digital literacy barriers, again, they have to be taken into account. Work around languages, that's why work around languages is very important if you want to ensure that everyone is able to participate in this financial revolution and even the overall digital revolution, right? And one thing that, again, one attempt that we are trying to do in specifically that domain is uh, trying to deliver services via this hub and spoke model, which is basically my the current work that I'm doing on around blendnet, where we are saying, hey, if you have an intelligent if I create an intelligent device which can sort of run and talk to all of these protocols in the back, but this device is placed at the appropriate locations, and becomes the technology which enables whoever the right person to deliver sort of these services at the edge, uh, then it could actually help create exponential adoption of some of these services, because it won't happen automatically, right? You need, again, you at least at the last mile, you need the right set of enablers and people. And another very critical thing is it has to make financial sense. Like, one is having a philanthropic approach where you say, okay, we'll create projects where it can run. Other is having the right incentive models in the system where it sort of works in a sustainable as well as scalable manner. So to summarize, basically all these platforms will play a important part in the overall puzzle, but they can't, at least they won't be able to solve the entire problem by itself. They need the other pieces also to come together. uh,
Yeah, thanks, Apurva. I also completely agree with what you're saying. Like, because right now, all these platforms are making it very easy for the developers or the startups to jump in and look at the market share and then make products. But again, as you mentioned, like some of the work that you've been doing and your team have been doing, like those kind of insights, if they are working on that as well, then it becomes a coherent solution. Otherwise, like it might become again a replica of some of the Western approach for financial inclusion, and it may not, it may be forced. It may work because that will be the only option if in some case, and then people are forced to use it. But again, as you mentioned about technology as a reflection of their current practices and their value system, that might be at loss again. So yeah, thanks a lot for that insight.
So, in the bracket of the pyramid, what is the income range of the users that you're designing for? And the second question would be, are there any challenges from the collectors on the collectors end? I mean, do we actually, and how many such collectors are there? Do
okay.
we have manpower?
Yeah. So okay. So I'll first read in the pyramid that we designed that uh, when we say this middle trap or the middle cap, here we're talking about people who have some disposable income now, which means they are able to take up additional credit. So it's not like they're totally living hand to mouth and they're in fact on the negative at the end of the month. But now they require much more stringent financial planning in terms of being able to accommodate these loans. So we are looking at, so the auto driver community that we worked with, they were at least all of them were doing 25 to 30,000 per month, and some were doing way higher than that. And even if you look at the income ranges of a lot of people working on these gig platforms like delivery agents and all, roughly similar income range. So this is people who now have an ability to, or an income generation, a stable sort of a stable way to generate some income, and would like a set of tools designed towards which could help, let's say, help them get assets. uh, that was the first part. Second, in terms of the delivery, or sorry, in terms of the collection agents or the field agents, initially, a lot of our field agents were identified from the community, and these were people who were managing some of these self-help groups, sort of setup. So they were people who were more digitally aware, more financially literate. So they were able to guide the members. But as we progressed and scaled up, we started taking up more, identifying more people. Now, around 2006, 2008, government had introduced, RBI had introduced this policy of BCs, which is a bank to enable financial inclusion, could assign people known as business correspondents who could then provide these last mile banking services. And if you look at a lot of the business model of entities like NovoPay, Pay Nearby, and Eco, they're built on aggregation of a lot of these retailers or these stores, which uh, end up also becoming centers for a lot of these banking services. We started identifying those people also, putting them through training, and then making them collections agents. There are several in terms of only, let's say, people working with three wheels. We have close to 200 people now on the ground who are, and each agent is able to manage anywhere between 50 to 100, 50 to 100 people in terms of managing their loans. Earlier, when we actually started out the study, this number was only around 25 to 30. So with all the right components of technology, lot of training, lot of I would say effort in terms of ensuring that the various pieces fit together. We've at least seen 2x, 3x scale up in terms of the ability to manage and successfully support these lending activities.
Okay. Thanks for answering that. Rashmi has something to say.
Yes. Hi, Apurva. Actually, I'm also doing one project for low literate users where actually this is called Mahila Mudra.
Okay.
So they will be actually, so that's just a start. We just got the project now. So in that project, we are actually, so they are basically artisans. And for them, we are creating some type of this application where they can actually work with their finance, how to do that one.
Okay.
So most important here, I find the problem is that the motivations for them to use this particular applications. So can you suggest me what we can actually, how we can motivate these people, because they are used to of doing certain things in their way. So how we can motivate them actually to use this particular application or do like our study that way.
So good question, Rashmi. Okay, there are two answers. So I'll tell you one. Initially, we also faced whenever there's a new platform which you bring in and you want to suddenly change the practices of people.
Yeah.
Any new introduction of any new platform, while it brings its advantages, it also comes with its sets of constraints that'll come in. I'll give you something as simple as, let's say, when the field agents previously, when all they were managing on the ground were manual collections, let's say using paper and pen, they never had to worry about the phone battery for something as simple as that, which now meant, let's say, if your phone's not working or if your battery is low, you can't actually do collection. So any new technology that you bring in comes with its set of constraints. Now, in our case, there were three things which worked. One was the right set of training, which went out to all the people who were using the technology in terms of why you should use it. Otherwise, there is an inherent at a subconscious level, I could always say, I'll just do it in the paper. I can actually go back home and just digitize it. I don't necessarily need to do this on the ground. Uh, Second was there were it made economic sense. Like it was done in a sustainable manner where, let's say, uh, things like managing transaction reversals and all became much simpler. And when the agents realized that, okay, doing it digitally means way lesser headache in terms of any sort of confusion which comes on the ground, all of those things, the adoption picked up. And third, we also introduced a sort of we talked about motivators, some sort of nudges and incentives on the app to at least encourage initial adoption. And then it's like once you've encouraged initial adoption, there is appropriate training, and people start appreciating they have overtaken the initial challenging phase, and it's part of your daily routine and habit. Then you can see some steady adoption. So there is some initial curve where some additional effort is required in terms of undertaking all these activities.
Sure. Thanks so much. One more question was that applications, are they were without training, they were able to use the application, or you actually gave them the training and then they were able to use it?
So our application, Rashmi, we had designed it for use, at least to start off with, in an intermediate setting. So there were people who went out on the ground and they were able to explain key concepts around, okay, this is how you visualize your loan. and we had to initially train this small set of people who were then traveling and educating
Like a
all the
moderator type of.
moderated, and only later on we introduced a direct application for the borrowers to interact with directly. And even there we regularly launched, let's say, videos in terms to explain the basic features on the application. And uh, uh, although not a lot of people use those videos, we realize those videos were used by the agents when drivers had questions. Like
Okay.
it's we had thought, oh, we have created all these FAQ and these how to use videos. No one will ever had questions because everyone would just magically go and look at all these. Never happened. What used to happen is that whenever people face challenges in terms of using the app, they would reach one of their agent or
Moderator.
their moderator, and he would say, just
Okay.
take a look at
So,
that video.
so moderator played very important role in your application, basically.
Yes, yes. So moderator played a key role in terms of the overall intervention was designed as moderator as being, or the intermediaries being as the key deliverer of services. And
Okay.
even today, the entire work that the startup does is built on this fact that you want to enable the intermediaries.
So right now in your application, what are the different type? I'm sorry, I'm taking us so much of time.
No worries, please go on.
मुझे पूछने का था, how many like type of tasks they are able to do? Like for example, receiving the money, sending the money. What type of how many type of tasks your application was able to do for them?
So we started off with the basic premise that, okay, we'll help you collect money and record those transactions. And post that, we built upon being able to educate people in terms of where they stand on their loan. So issuing a very easy graphical way to communicate loan information to them. Introduced motivators and nudges in terms of being able to track and promote good behaviors. And then we moved, even added, like with UPI kicking in, we added digital transactions that could be undertaken as part of the application. And now there are like over the last couple of years, there are like 10 different things. There is COVID information, there is information around charging stations, there is information around in fact,
So what is the most used task they do?
it's okay. So the drivers typically use it for primarily repayment. Like that's the most common activity. Or if there are some offers on the application which are relevant
Nudging
for
them
them.
to do.
Yes. For example, if during COVID, let's say we launched some ways to do a basic training around how do you stay healthy, some basic practices, and we were giving out COVID safety kits. So that, let's say, shot up the usage. So some of it's, I wouldn't say it's consistent. It's about what's relevant at any given point of time.
Okay, thanks so much for
Thank you
your
so much.
valuable time.